Welcome to today's session. We started organisms and population chapter. In that chapter, so we worked upon about the scientist. We have seen Ramdeo Mishra, who is father of Indian ecology. We discussed, right? And after that, we have seen the levels of biological organization, like what is organism, what is population, and then what is community, what is ecosystem, what is biome, what is biosphere. All that we discussed in second lecture. Now, in the third lecture, we discussed about major biomes. And in the fourth lecture, we started with a new topic. What are the major abiotic factors? Because in ecosystem or ecology, it's nothing but interactions among organisms and interactions of organisms with the environment. Now, what is environment made of? Environment is made up of abiotic factors. Now, what are the abiotic factors? Abiotic factors are light, temperature, then water and soil. So, these are the four major abiotic factors. Under that, in the previous lecture 4, we covered the first important ecologically relevant factor. What is that? It is temperature we covered. Now let's get to today's topic and let us discuss about the second abiotic factor, which is light. Okay, so which is water. So now we will discuss on the second abiotic factor. So under the topic major abiotic factors, we finished in lecture number 4, temperature. Now we are working on the second factor in today's class. So what is that factor? The factor is water. The factor is water. So now let us discuss on water in today's session. Biology is very interesting and it is scoring for NEET examinations. So hope in this journey you will feel biology very easy and very interesting, and if you are following all these things, read NCERT textbook thoroughly and follow the tips what I have given, reading information about the scientists, following all the exemplar questions and all, doing previous year NEET papers and ensuring yourself that you are bubbling or your bubblings are correct, you are reading the question in a proper manner. So it is very easy to score out of in biology. Okay, so follow the classes thoroughly. Read the NCERT textbook thoroughly, have a thorough understanding, then it's very easy to get into medical colleges. Okay, now let's go with the second factor, which is water, right? So we know that like without water, nothing can happen. Life cannot sustain without water. And on the earth, majority is water only. That means after temperature, can we tell that water is the second important factor which will sustain or support the life, right? So next to temperature, water is the second important factor which supports the life. Which supports the life. And I told you that majority of the earth's surface is covered by water. How much it is? If we want to give the numerical, you know it is 71%. 71% of the earth's surface is covered by water. And when we talk about evolution, the first life forms have evolved in water only. So we can write the first life arose in water. So the life happened in water, and without water life cannot sustain. So we can write that also. Without water life cannot sustain. Without water life cannot sustain. Now there are certain areas on the earth which are called as dry, arid, desert areas. Now in desert areas, because if you go deep into the soil layers also, water content will be very less. Now those plants and animals, in order to hold that water, they have some certain special adaptations, like the leaves are modified into spines, then the stem will become photosynthetic structure to do photosynthesis. And if you take kangaroo rat, it can survive the whole life without drinking a sip of water. Then how will it get its water? Means by breaking fatty acids, by beta oxidation. So means the organisms which are surviving in dry, arid, desert conditions, so they have some special adaptations to survive with minimum water requirement. So the organisms which are surviving in dry, arid, desert conditions, organisms which are surviving in dry, arid, desert conditions, they will have special adaptations to survive with low water content. They show special adaptations. Why? To survive with limited water content. With limited water content. For example, if we have to discuss on this point, to take some plants like cactus plants and all. So why the leaves are modified into spines there? Because we know that leaf has stomata, and the stomata is the place through which the water escapes as water vapor. If it has to hold that water, the leaf stomata should be synced or sunken stomata. For that, the leaf has to reduce its surface area, so it has modified into a spiny structure, right? And I told in animal adaptation, kangaroo rat, it will survive its whole life without drinking a sip of water. How come it will do? Because it can generate its water by metabolism. We call it as a metabolic water. Okay. Now, all the water which is present on the earth is fresh water only, or they are marine forms also. They are marine forms also, means salt will be mixed up in the water. Now, how to measure the salt concentration? Salt concentration, if it is a salty water, salt concentration can be measured by salinity. Now, how much salt concentration is there if we have to see? Now, salinity can be expressed. Salinity can be expressed like in salt concentration per 1000. Salt concentration, how much salt concentration is there in parts per 1000? Now, basing on this, we can tell that if the salt concentration is less than 5 parts per 1000, then we call such water bodies are inland water bodies. If the salt concentration is less than 5 parts per 1000, then it is called inland water bodies. In terms of percentage, if we have to write, it is 0.5 percentage. In terms of percentage, it is 0.5 percentage. This is one salt body where the water concentration, with the salt concentration in the water is less than 5 parts per 1000. If the salt concentration, if it is in the range of 30 to 35 parts per 1000, what is the salt body called as? It is called as seawater body. If the salt concentration is within the range of 30 to 35 parts per 1000, then it is called seawater body. Then if we have to give it in terms of percentage, it's 3 to 3.5 percentage. 3 to 3.5 percentage. Again, we got a new important point to discuss here. This question is be there again. In which textbook? It is there in NCERT Exemplar. MCQ it is. So, important point for us. Because in the NEET examination, directly the NCERT Exemplar questions will be asked as it is. So there is a possibility of asking this question then. What is the salt concentration in a seawater body is a question, and they will give you less than 5 parts per 1000, 30 to 35 parts per thousand are, 75 parts per thousand are, 100 parts per thousand are. We know the answer is 30 to 35 parts per thousand. If they're asking in terms of percentage, then it is 3 to 3.5 percentage. And in the exemplar book, they have given 3 to 3.5 percentage only. And in the textbook, NCERT textbook, they have given like 30 to 35 parts per thousand. And next concept is, if the salt concentration is more than 100 parts per thousand, then what is that water body called? That water body is called hypersaline lagoons. If the water concentration, the salt concentration in the water is more than 100 parts per thousand, then it is called hypersaline lagoons. And if you have to give it in terms of percentage, it will be 10 percentage then. It will be 10 percentage. So what did we discuss so far? So next to temperature, water is the second important factor. 71% of the earth's surface is covered by water. The first life happened in water. Without water, life cannot sustain. Organisms then which are surviving under dry, arid, low water conditions, they have certain special adaptations to survive with minimum water concentration. Now, all the water is fresh water or marine water forms are there? Marine water forms are there. How much salt is there in terms of salinity? How will you express salinity? In parts per thousand. Now, if the salt concentration is less than 5 parts per thousand, inland water body. 30 to 35, sea water body. More than 100, hypersaline lagoons. Now, let us see on the basis of the salt concentration, how can you categorize or how can you divide the organisms? On the basis of temperature tolerance, we have divided them into euryhaline and stenohaline, isn't it? In the same manner, on the basis of their ability to tolerate narrow range or wide range of salt concentrations, we can divide the organisms into euryhaline and stenohaline. Let's go. Basing on salinity, we can divide the organisms into euryhaline and stenohaline. Euryhaline means these are those organisms which can tolerate wide range of salinities. So euryhaline means organisms can tolerate very wide range of salinity. Now, examples for euryhaline which can tolerate wide range of salinities is, we can take the migratory fishes or marine water fishes like hilsa and salmon we can write down. So the examples are the migratory fishes, migratory marine fishes I am telling. What are the examples? One is hilsa we can take. Another one is salmon. Now this hilsa and salmon are marine fishes. Now these marine fishes, for swanning, for laying their eggs from the marine water, they go to the fresh water, they lay their eggs there and they'll come back to the marine water again and then they will die. So means from salty water they are going to the fresh water, they are staying there, they are laying their eggs, means they are tolerating this salinity also, they are tolerating fresh water also, means they come under euryhaline. Okay. So what is that migration called? So migration from sea water to fresh water for the purpose of swanning, laying eggs, is called as anadromous migration. What is this migration called? Anadromous migration. Okay. Now let's go to stenohaline. What do you mean by stenohaline? Stenohaline means these organisms, they tolerate very narrow ranges of temperature, salinities. So they can tolerate very narrow range of salinity. Then what are they called? Stenohaline. Now, examples for stenohaline are majority of the aquatic animals are stenohaline only. So, the examples are majority of aquatic animals. Majority of aquatic animals are stenohaline. So, we have divided the organisms on the basis of salinity into euryhaline and stenohaline. Now, let us see different water bodies and how are they named, and the organisms which are growing in those water bodies, how do we call them? Like, we'll see that. Now, the organisms which are in water are called aquatic organisms. The organisms in coastal areas, what are they called? The organisms in open water bodies, what are they called? On open water bodies, if they are floating, what are they called? If they are active and if they are swimming, what are they called? If they are bottom dwelling, what are they called? Like that, there are some terms they will ask us. Let us get familiar with those terms. Okay. Now let's go. So let us see the organisms which are in water. What are the organisms called? The organisms which are in water, we all of us know that they are aquatic organisms. They are aquatic organisms. Now, next one. The organisms which are in coastal areas, what are they called? We will see. Organisms which are in coastal areas. Organisms which are in coastal water. You know, organisms which are in coastal water, they are called neritic organisms. They are called neritic organisms. Now, the organisms which are in the open water body, what are they called? Organisms which are in the open water body are called pelagic organisms. Organisms in open water bodies. What are they called? Organisms in open water bodies are called pelagic organisms. The pelagic organisms which are small. Small means microscopic, right? Small and microscopic. What are they called? Planktonic. Phytoplanktons we call, right? Now, the pelagic organisms which are big but floating on the surface, then what are they called? Or big organisms which are floating, they are called as newstons. They are pelagic organisms which are big. Big means macroscopic. What are they called? Macroscopic are called newstons. Right? And organisms are big, but if they are active swimmers, then they are called nectons. Organisms which are big, right? So they are big, but active swimmers they are. If they are active swimmers, what they are called? Nectons. Okay, so which are on the surface? Newstons. Which are actively swimming, then they are called nectons. And organisms which are bottom dwellers, then they are called benthic. Organisms which are bottom dwelling or dwellers, what are they called? They are called benthic. They are called benthic. So all these are the terms we should be familiar with. Okay. Now again, let's go through once again. Organisms which are in fresh water are aquatic organisms. Organisms which are in coastal water are neritic organisms. Organisms which are in open water bodies, pelagic organisms. Organisms which pelagic organisms only, they're small and microscopic, planktonic. If they are big and macroscopic, on the surface only, neustenic. If they are big but if they are swimming there down, then that is called nectans. They're swimming there at the bottommost layer, then they're called benthic. Now water bodies are of two types. One is called lentic water body, other one is called lotic water body. Let us see what is meant by lentic and lotic water body. So lentic means it's a standing water body. Lotic means it is a floating water body. So lentic is a standing water body and lotic means it is floating water body. It is floating water body. Now depending upon the water content, how much availability of water is there, we can divide the organisms into three types. What are they? We can call them as mesophytes or thermophytes and xerophytes. So let us see that also. So in which ways we classify them? So one are xerophytes. Next one is mesophytes. And next one is psychrophytes. Xerophytes means these are the organisms which grow in dry, arid conditions with limited water, right? So xerophytes means organisms which grow in dry and arid conditions. Mesophyte means which grow under moderate conditions, moderate amount of water. So these are the organisms which go under moderate water conditions. And psychrophytes or hydrophytes you can go. Psychrophytes we can call, or we can call them as hydrophytes. These are the organisms which grow in abundant water, right? Which grow in abundant water bodies. So now with this we finished our today's session. We discussed about the second abiotic factor, which is water, and we have seen what are the types of water bodies we have seen, how do we categorize the organisms we have seen, what are the specific names we have seen, how is water important we have seen. Now in the next lecture we will discuss about the third abiotic factor, which is light. So if you like the video, you can like, share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.